Hello everyone, I'm Ron Kelly, and I'm here to tell you that business is good. The City Council and I have produced balanced budgets for years. Through careful spending, we even had a $100,000 budget surplus this year. The Council has also restored the city's reserve funds, which had been depleted for years before any of us took office. Our audits are also completely up to date. For the first time in decades, business is growing in Defuniak Springs. In 2011, when I was elected, there were about 140 registered businesses. According to current city records, we now have over 330 businesses in town. That means we've more than doubled the number of businesses. Best of all, we've accomplished all of this without raising ad valorem taxes by a single penny. We also just voted to lower utility rates, which I'd recommended months ago when we discussed the budget surplus. The council has made major improvements to the city airport, improvements to parks and recreational areas, including a well-equipped skate park for the youth right outside this building. We continue to give financial support to local programs like the Boys and Girls Club, Little League, the Senior Center, Chautauqua Assembly, and many others. These programs improve our quality of life and draw new visitors. We support high-quality initiatives such as Lecom Dental School and Veterans Lodge, which will offer physical and emotional rehabilitation for seriously wounded veterans and will create even more high-paying jobs. We welcome more restaurants and shops than ever before and launched Main Street Defuniak Springs, whose stated goal is to revitalize our downtown business district. Thank you.
Are we?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Defuniak Springs. My name's Kevin Crystal, and I'm a
You're going to have to hold,
I'm sorry.
Candace, you're going to really have to hold it up.
Okay, my name's Kevin Crystal. I'm a lifelong resident of Defuniak Springs, and I am seeking the seat of seat 3 for City Council. One of the things that I want to do for the city is restore our ability to have confidence in the City Council. I also want to bring more jobs here. One of the things that I've learned as I've walked around and as I've talked to many of you is we have a housing situation that needs to be corrected immediately. And that's something I want to work on. We actually have a project right now that is bringing in close to 100 houses that will probably be here in the near future. We also have opportunities for new jobs. The new job opportunities will probably bring in somewhere between 200 and 300 new jobs for this area. Some of you may have heard of it. It's called Project Y. And that's in the works. That's something that I've been a part of. So again, we want to be able to keep our youth here. That's something that has been a passion to me, because our youth, a lot of our talent is going to other places, and they're coming back here, but when they come back here, they're coming to retire and not necessarily feed all those good ideas that they get from Florida State or Florida or Auburn. I got to go around the room because if I leave anybody out, in Alabama, when they come back here, they're coming back to retire. So we want to have a place that, City of Defuniak, that will allow this to be our first choice for our youth to come back to, not second choices, third choices, or retirement. So again, my name is Kevin Crystal, and I'm seeking the seat of seat 3 on the City Council on April 9th, and we're asking for your vote. Thanks.
Tell you what, I was wiped out whenever I saw all the cars out there, and I couldn't believe it. I didn't think we'd have this good a showing, and I applaud you. I applaud you. I sure do. And my name is Kermit Wright. I was born here in the Lakeside Hospital on February the 24th, 1947. All of y'all were around back then. I got married to my lovely bride of 52 years. On June the 19th, 1967, we bought 3 houses. I have been paying property taxes in the city since June the 19th, 1967. And I'm retired U.S. Postmaster of the Funiac Springs. I got to retire as postmaster in my hometown, and that meant everything to me. Prior to that, I was postmaster in Chipley. Before that, postmaster in Freeport. Before that, postmaster in Sneeds. I was a glutton for punishment, and I got plenty of it. But what I got from that was a lot of business sense, whatever, experience. And whenever I retired, I served as the executive director for Walton County ARC, the ARC of Walton County. And I'm going to go faster. My wife is Brenda Anderson Wright, and she's the daughter of John Homer Anderson and Daddy Burt Anderson. I'm a father and a grandfather. I'm the owner and operator of Kermit Wright LLC. I've got 8 years of experience, and I got the scars to prove it. And I've enjoyed it, and I thank y'all. I yield the rest of my time to my brother from New York. I'm teasing.
Can you hear? If you don't mind, I'm going to stand because I think that's easier to hear. I'm Robert McKnight, and this is my adopted hometown. I retired here. My wife and I discovered this town, and we knew it was the best small town in Florida. And we came here because it was at the top of our list. I am a retired college professor with background in public health, worked in rural communities all of my life, looked at some of the public policy issues that rural towns have, and I was also a captain in the U.S. Army in Alaska, and yes, I have seen Russia, but not from my front porch. I have testified before Congress on advocacy issues for appropriation. I believe that small towns have very unique people. And my wife passed away last year, and I learned how loving a small town can be. And I want to give back to this town because I have a big toolbox of experience in public policy. I have a big toolbox in terms of getting money through getting our public officials in Washington and other places to give us that money. My promises, I only have 3. Number 1, I'm not going to make any promises except to say, I have custody of my ears. I will listen carefully. I have custody of my tongue. I will ask a lot of questions. And most importantly, I have custody of my brain to make the best decisions for you. My goal is that we get the best small town government in Florida that we can afford. I have information here on the table if you'd like more.
Good evening, and thank you all for everybody coming out tonight. I'm Janie Griffith, and I just want everybody to know that I am a member of a special interest group, and my special interest group includes every citizen inside the city of the Funiac Springs and every parcel in the city, not just one area. Every area of the city is as important as the others. I'm a lifelong resident of Walton County. I'm finishing up my 30th year as an employee for the Walton County School District. During the past 4 years, our city has faced many changes and significant challenges. I've served alongside 3 city managers, 2 interim city managers, and 4 finance directors. The rotating vacuum of leadership and necessary retraining process has left its mark on our government and has stymied the community growth in some ways. Despite that, we have moved ahead on many fronts, including streamlining of city staff, updating financial proceedings, including upgraded computer software, completion of Highway 331 and avoiding the attempt to bypass the city, location of the Veterans Lodge within our community, participation in the National Main Street USA program, keeping property taxes at 4.5 mils, establishing a skate park for our youth, creating a committee to update the city charter, creating a CRA, and bringing reserves into compliance and maintaining these appropriately. In seeking a second term as your representative on City Council, I will continue to maintain ongoing communications with you, the citizens. I will continue to work tirelessly to be proactive in city financial matters, keeping ahead of ever changing priorities and needs, not constantly hiding behind the budget. I will work to find creative ways to keep our city moving forward. Let's keep Defuniak Springs on the right track. Vote for me, Janie Griffith. Thank you.
Well, they saved the best for last. My name's Todd Beerbaum. I'm a lifelong resident of Defuniak. I graduated from Walton High and I attended Northwest Florida State College. We used to call it OW. I've been working in the information technology field for over 21 years. My career has taken me from small businesses to banks to government agencies to a multinational software company that has over $2.4 billion in worldwide revenue. In my day job, I manage about 15,000 servers on the East and West Coast. I want to see our government get back to basics. I believe the council, first and foremost, should be policymakers and strategic visionaries. I want to support our city manager, and I want to make sure that he runs the day-to-day operations of the city, and that as a councilman, we manage him along with the other appointed positions. You know, in my profession, continuing education is a daily experience. As technology advances, the thinking of today is turned on its head tomorrow. It's important to be led by principle and not ritual. I want to bring a fresh perspective to the challenges facing our city. You know, as a young kid, I'd ride up to King's Hardware to buy BBs, and I can remember a downtown that was full of life and full of businesses. Our city has a long history as a vibrant community and a full downtown. Because of this, and our Lake Defuniak, I want to make sure it's the best that we have. As we grow in all directions, I want us to grow responsibly, learning from the past and always looking to the future as we make strategic decisions about our infrastructure and our services. I'm Todd Beerbaum, and I'm running for City Council C1.
I'd like to thank y'all for your brief introduction. This is how we will proceed. We have some questions that have been given to us from members of the public, and we're going to start. Which one end we're going to start at, Matt? We're going to start with Todd, and everyone will be asked the same question. Then we'll start with Jamie. Then we'll start with Mr. McKnight. We will go round robin so that everybody has a chance to be first the first time and get the first question. So if you're ready, Matt and Brian here will start us off with our first question.
Yes, sir. Would you please describe your top 3 goals that you would focus on as a city council member?
You know, my top 3 goals would be, first and foremost, would probably be to implement the lean process, which is something that I experienced at the sheriff's office. Secondly, another goal would be to streamline the business application process. My wife and I experienced that recently as we opened a new business downtown, and so that's something that's very, very important to me, is a streamlining of the business process. A third goal would be to make the future land use map and the zoning map match up so that we can promote business growth and provide a consistency for new businesses that open up.
My 3 priorities would be to make sure that our citizens are taken care of. We hear what our citizens say. We continue to keep our millage rate low and keep our utilities so our people can afford to pay our utilities. And let our city manager, now that we have a very professional city manager, make those operations, and let the city council do the policies and procedure making, and that's because that is what we are supposed to do with our time instead of manage the day-to-day operations.
This is Robert McKnight. The three things that I think would be the priorities after April as we move forward toward the Charter Revision Committee and the revision of our city charter that is underway. This is the town constitution. This is going to be a very important process. The second thing is I sit on the Economic Development Committee, and I believe that the city needs a position, perhaps part-time, of Economic Development Director. A committee cannot do that job, and I'm convinced of that. We must have a person whose job focuses on economic development. Somebody who's around other than a few hours a month, which is what a committee does. And the third thing I'd like to focus on is what can we do about all the water that is being lost in our pipes? How much of the water that we pump out of the ground are we losing in the pipe? That may be one reason we have some issues related to the cost of our water in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Kermit. It's not like, yes, there she is. Okay, I got it straightened up now. I want to,
Put the mic closer to you.
wow, it wasn't on while ago. Hello.
There you go. There you
All
go.
right,
Now start.
start over.
Yeah.
All right. What I would love to see is our city limits expanded. Whenever I drive into Geneva for 7 minutes, it takes you to go from one side to the other side of Geneva. And, you know, we need true representation of the labor pool that we have here. And we don't have that right now. Until we get out there and expand our city limits and incorporate all the outlying areas, then we're not going to have large industries come. And I want to work with our businesses as as this 3031 comes in. They're going to be temporary disruptions. I want to make them as light as we can. Third thing is I want to make sure that every person within our city has a voice at City Hall, 24 hours a day. Thank you.
Again, my name is Kevin Crystal. My top 3 goals would be to restore to you, the citizens, the integrity of the offices of the City Council. We've had a lot of back and forth and disrespect on both sides of the desk, I guess you could say, toward the City Council. And just being able to remember that we serve you, the citizens. We're here to make sure that the city is a great place for you to live, a great place for you to raise your children, a great place for you to raise your grandchildren. The second thing is providing jobs that give a livable wage. An opportunity for you to be able to work one job, not 3, or not, you know, you're at Taco Bell this morning, you're at Walmart at lunchtime, and then you're at, say, Sonic or something like that on roller skates for dinner. The last one is housing for our seniors as well as our other citizens.
Thank you. Ron Kelly here. I would focus on expanding our utilities throughout the city. We want to get water and sewer and gas to everyone in the city, and to expand those utilities and join up with Freeport, which we had joined with the county and Freeport to do. That will open up an entire area for major development and housing. Another area is to maintain our town's unique identity while we're growing. We all want to grow and fill those storefronts, but we don't want to lose the charm that draws people here.
Amen.
And finally, we want to encourage more new housing. We just approved a 50-unit housing complex on Orange Avenue, but we need a lot more. And we need more single-family housing as well. So those would be my top 3. Thank you.
Okay, the next question, we'll start with Janie and continue to proceed to the right. Question is, please describe what qualities you believe are required to be an effective council member.
I believe that as an effective council member, you have to be able to,
Jamie, please hold it closer.
You gotta hold it close, y'all, yeah.
believe to be effective as a city council member, you need to listen to the city, to the citizens. You need to be available to them. You need to follow the rules. What rules are good for one is good for all. And you need to be punctual and be where you're supposed to be whenever, if you have a council meeting, you should be there. And the only reason that you shouldn't be there is if you were sick. But, sometimes we just can't help it. But that's some goals.
My three things mirror what I said a few minutes ago. The number one characteristic of a good person on the city council is a good listener. Someone that listens without interruption, that listens without trying to correct people, that listens carefully to the issues. The second thing a council member needs to do is ask lots of questions and be a good skeptic. Don't accept it just because it's written down. Ask questions. Is there another perspective that hasn't been seen? And the other thing, council members need to read carefully and analyze and synthesize all the material. Council members also need to be a good advocate for the city. An advocate for the city, whether that's in Washington or Tallahassee. And finally, a good council member does not micromanage the city manager.
Kermit Wright. Mine's simple. Accessibility. You need to be accessible to everyone within your city 24/7. There's no days off. There's no time that you're closed. And to have a genuine concern for the health and well-being of every citizen that you serve. And last of all, whenever you're given a problem, follow up. It's not over till it's over. Thank you.
Again, this is Kevin Crystal. I think one of the things that is very important to being a city council member is really understanding what a city council person does. And from a top level, really a city council member is a policymaker and we deal with budgets. There's nothing else that we really should be doing other than listening to the public. But again, I agree that we shouldn't be micromanaging. If we have a city manager, if we have a public works director, if we have all those people, then they should be doing those jobs. If they're not doing those jobs, then we need to find someone else. But to summarize, we're policymakers, and it's our job to make sure that money is accounted for and is spent correctly.
Okay, gentlemen, lady, make sure you're giving her enough time to reset the clock, okay?
I've heard a lot of good answers. They're all right. You do have to be accessible to the people, but not just accessible, not just listen, but also respond to their concerns. Sometimes it's a simple complaint, a pothole or something, but sometimes it's a big issue. So you have to listen and talk to them, always be available. There are no days off. So you have to be willing to be on the job all the time. The other thing is you've got to do your homework. You can't shoot from the hip. You can't show up and see your packet or agenda for the first time. You've got to understand what the issues are and ask questions. And finally, you've got to be able to talk with people, to reach out, and as I've heard, advocate all the time. Everywhere you go, you always represent the city. Thank you.
First characteristic I would say would be passion. Understanding the city and being able to speak passionately and advocate passionately for all different sides of the situation. I would also say another characteristic is problem solving, being able to compartmentalize and break down complex problems and tackle them bit by bit. And finally, I would say that just having a strategic vision and being a visionary, being able to look at the 40,000-foot view and not worry about the 5,000-foot view. Thank you.
For Mr. McKnight, do you think that there should be term limits for the council and position of mayor?
I think it's all. Now it's on. I have not reached a decision on that yet because I'd like to hear more from the city. I know this is something that may be included in some recommendations of the Charter Review Committee. This is something that needs to be discussed at a town meeting related to the pros and cons of this. I think that there are a lot of good arguments for setting a term limit, particularly maybe a term limit of 2 terms. But there are some equally valid reasons that say the voters need to be the ones that decide the term limits. My approach on this right now is one of neutrality. I've not reached a decision. I think we need to see what the voters want to say and also look at the unintended consequences of either enacting such a legislation or not enacting such a legislation.
Kermit, right. Whenever you ask yourself this question, you know, this job pays so darn much, you know. And whenever you get someone that's willing to give of themselves, and they take the time, and you don't get the hang of it your first year. I don't care who you are, how smart you are. You're going to have a lot of bruises. You're going to have to get in there and handle a lot of adversity. And so I would agree with Bob in that respect that the citizens should decide how long you need to be there. Whenever the citizens think you need to be gone, they'll move you. You don't have to worry about it. Thank you.
Term limits is something that is being heavily discussed in the Charter Committee on Wednesday nights. And I believe that that's not a decision for the city council to make or a potential city council member. That's a decision for the citizens to make. And actually, that's the only way it can be made because it has to be a referendum in order to add that to the city charter. It's not on there now. So my answer to that question would be that's up to the citizens.
I sort of can go either way on that. As has been said, there are good reasons to do it and good reasons not to. Probably at the local level, it's not as important as it is with our state and federal government because some of those folks make a career out of it. But we all know people who have served 1 term here and been voted out. So I don't see it as pressing, but I'd be willing to accede to the will of the people, whatever they decide on that.
That's it.
While I'm personally not opposed to it, it would certainly be something that I would want the citizens to vote on and not something that the council decides arbitrarily. Thank you.
Serving on my first term, I realized that after I sat out there for 4 years before I was elected, then I thought that I knew it. Well, whenever I got up there, you don't know anything. It's a completely different ballgame. So the first 4 years, you're just learning. You're learning your way around. So, but I agree with everyone else. That's the citizens' choice, whether or not we have term limits and whether or not there's term limits set. You, the citizens, are the ones that keep us in here or put us out. Thank you.
Our next question will start with Mr. Wright. As our city grows old, infrastructure needs to be upgraded and expanded. How do you propose funding these types of projects?
We have a grant writer, Chris Mitchell, and we have a grant writer. His name is Chris Mitchell, and he is energetic. Everybody knows Chris. And without grants, you're not going to update all your infrastructure. You're going to have to get out and seek help from the federal government and state and other sources.
infrastructure is an important issue, and as Mr. McKnight was saying earlier, was talking about the water and the pipes, different things of that nature. But the only way I think that we're going to be able to upgrade our infrastructure in the near future for the things that we need, and we're potentially looking at a wastewater treatment plant in a lot of different pipes all over the city, is working with DOT, working with the county, the state, and making sure that we have good, strong liaisons in Tallahassee, in Washington, and making sure that we get funding to do it. Because a small town, we don't have to depend on them, but we definitely have a need for assistance.
We will have to seek grants, that's true. We have to seek appropriations from Tallahassee, and if there's any way we can get federal dollars, we have to go after that too. Because there are no small infrastructure projects. All of them cost hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of dollars. We can't just go to a sack of gold in the corner and pay for that. So we have to continue to be able to work with our state and federal folk who are there and have the purse strings. There's just no other way to do it. Yet the good news is we're in better financial shape than we've been in a long time. So those doors continue to open for us, and we continue to try to keep up. You can't fall behind. That's one of the problems that has happened in this town before. So you have to keep up and keep doing it at all times.
I also agree that we need to seek great grants at a state and federal level. I think that is going to be the primary source for paying for it, because currently I believe that the citizens are bearing enough of the burden as it is. We just recently saw a 25% increase in our sewer rates over the last few years, and that was partly because we didn't increase the rates when we should have, but we were also paying on debt from previous projects. So we need to carefully consider going into debt for infrastructure projects, but we also need to make sure that we try to seek first state and federal funding for them.
We have in the past and need to continue to seek appropriations and all from the state and federal government, because we do not have the deep purses with all this sacks of gold in the corner. So we have got to work with our legislatures and all and seek grants to make our infrastructure better, because it is old, because our city is old. And the only way to get it improved is to replace it, and that is mega dollars.
I'm going to stand because I pulled some stuff out of the toolbox. We've got a lot of asphalt in this town. This is part of infrastructure. We've got to make sure that we have our roads that are safe, not potholes. We've got horrible sidewalks in parts of town. They break all the time. We have some places that don't have sidewalks. We've got water pipe. We've got gas pipe. We've got sewer pipe. Some of it's pretty old. I agree on the issue of federal grants. We can go to Washington and lobby. I think we should also make sure Public Works is doing appropriate and best practices for preventive maintenance, and that Public Works is also doing the appropriate things to extend the life of our infrastructure. That is routine repair and not neglect of areas. We need to extend the life of as much as we can of our infrastructure. But we don't have sidewalks in the right places. We need good asphalt. We need to have pipe that lasts. Thank you.
You're on the hot.
Yes, for Kevin. Name a short-term and long-term challenge facing the city, and how would you address it? A short-term and long-term challenge, and how would you address it?
One of our short-term challenges is one of our short-term challenges is infrastructure projects and funding. And again, how we handle it is lobbying. lobbying the city, lobbying the state, the county. There are dollars that can be appropriated through BP Triumph funds. And what some of our long-term issues is definitely housing and jobs. And we're actually handling that now through public-private partnerships, creating new jobs that give us sustainable or livable wages. Thank you.
One of our problems is, as we've heard, housing. And it's something that is going to affect us for a long time to come. One of the problems is we're trying to catch up, because for so long it seems like Defuniak Springs had been under a glass dome, and it never grew, and people thought they wanted it to stay that way, but in reality we were moving backward. And so instead of continuing to keep up with all the things we needed, housing, infrastructure, those things, they began to fall behind. So now we're trying to play catch up. Again, we are welcoming housing and we are working on infrastructure. We're doing all those things. They're not glamorous and they're not glitzy, but they have to be done, because we've got to think 25, 30, 40 years in advance. We've got to lay the foundation for all future growth.
I would say short-term goal would be to streamline several of the business processes around the city and to implement the lean process. The lean process involves the people that do those particular activities in the day-to-day and ask them how best to perform those activities. So I would want to implement the lean process, which can then touch every aspect of the city. That's a short-term goal of mine. Long-term goal, obviously infrastructure is extremely important and is a high dollar cost item, but I would also want to make sure that our zoning and permitting is something that people can walk in and then walk out the same day with what they need.
That would be wonderful.
My long-term goal is the infrastructure, because that is what is so expensive and such a necessary need for the city. And my short-term goal is to complete this charter, and that way everyone will know what their responsibilities, duties and responsibilities are to the city and the citizens.
My short-term goal is to make the city council meetings more relevant by having some audio-visual equipment in there so that staff and the city and the visitors will know what's being presented. If you give a lecture in high school, you're probably going to use audio-visual equipment. We need that in City Hall, but I can't see much of it. The second thing that we need to do is we've got to get rid of the red tape in this town. The red tape of how to start a business, the red tape of doing this, the red tape of what type of dog you can't walk outside your house, and that is currently in the charter. And if you have a dog in heat, don't you dare try to walk it outside your property, because it's against the law in the city to walk a dog in heat. We have got things that need to go away, and we need to get rid of this red tape. My apologies to all the dogs.
Y'all been sitting here a while, you needed a smile. You know, our short-term goal, we're growing. I'm telling you, this place, just look around. We want to open our doors to businesses, but we want to be selective in those businesses. You don't want a house of ill repute coming in, and you want businesses that can contribute, that be an asset to this city. And long-term challenge, I want to get adequate representation for the population that we actually have to offer a business, an industry. Because whenever they call up and, less than 6,000 people, and I had it written down, I can't find it. But you know, that's not representation. That's not true representation of what we actually have.
Kevin just started.
We'll start with Mr. Kelly. What do you think the city should do about dilapidated houses and buildings?
That's a problem everywhere, not just here. The city has implemented a CRA with the stated goal of getting rid of blight, targeting properties as well as buildings that are just beyond repair, that are unsafe, that often play a home to the homeless, and it's really a problem. So we have just launched an agency that's going to be looking at that, and they are, again, long-term. We have to have long-term solutions for long-term problems.
In my reading of the ordinances in the city charter, it's pretty apparent that we should already have more than enough ordinances to deal with the dilapidated buildings within the city. So it's just a simple matter of code enforcement. So we need code enforcement, and then we also need to embrace the CRA to deal with the blight.
We were pleased whenever we did bring the CRA, vote to have a CRA, and I think that this is going to make a big difference for our city. And the other thing is that before we start telling our citizens what they need to do about cleaning up their blight, the city, we need to step up and take care of any blight that we have on any property that we own.
This is Robert McKnight. The CRA is in the future in terms of the money we'll have. I think there's some more immediate things we need to do. Those places that are owned by absentee landlords who are persistently bad actors need to face legal intervention. We have a lot of that in terms of absentee landlords. We also need education on code compliance so that we educate first and not just enforce first. And I know the last thing I think we need a neighborhood community coalition of volunteers that can help elderly individuals and those with disabilities who perhaps for no reason of their own cannot take care of the exterior of their properties. We could get our civic organizations and churches available to help those citizens who are of limited means to polish up that yard, get the leaves off the roof, clean up the brush, etc. So those would be some of my ideas.
First thing we got to have is code enforcement, and the code enforcement has got to have the backing of our city council. Code enforcement can't go out there and take action and then who is he? You know, we can handle that. You got to back your code enforcement person up, and then all the way down to the legal action by our legal staff. We have fought that over these years, but now we have finally come to a point to where the Atkins Law Firm can take action, because if you go and you process it and all the way to having them tear it down, and then we tear it down or whatever, then whenever it comes time for that to go on the bids, that to be bidded out, auctioned off, whatever, you might not get your money back. But at least now we got the wherewithal to go all the way with it. Thank you.
I think we can take a kind of a short-term and long-term approach to this problem. A short-term approach can be hiring additional staff. I've been on the planning board for about 6 years, the chairman for 2 years, and every code enforcement officer we've had has been overworked and underpaid. And even the cars, they've even worn the cars out trying to get around the city of Defuniak. So hiring additional staff will help. A long-term solution may be creating a code board. We have cities that are comparable to our size that have code boards. Obviously, they would be manned by volunteers appointed by the city council, but those boards would be able to handle more volume, I guess you could say, until we can get it cleaned up and get it under control, and then, you know, it could be managed from there.
All right, for our next question, Mr. Beerbaum, do you think the city should join the county and the city of Freeport in expanding water and sewer along 331?
I think we should always strive toward together with our neighbors as well as with the county. But that needs to be considered very, very carefully, because those projects are not cheap. So looking at it from a financial standpoint and making sure that we're not tying ourselves to a system in which we won't see a return on until it's time to repair it. Those kind of projects are easily $8 to $10 million. And so I don't want to strap the city with that kind of debt just simply because it needed to be done and there's no one hooked up to it. So I want to make sure we do that responsibly.
The city went in coordination with the county and the city of Freeport to make that connection. If we could receive the Triumph funds to make that happen so it would not be an additional burden for the citizens to have to pay for, I'm all in agreement with it, because we do need to support our neighbors and our neighbors supporting us.
I'm going to take a different approach. I'm going to say I'm quite a skeptic about extending water lines. This is my priority. My priority is the city limits of Defuniak Springs. We have infrastructure issues in this town, in my opinion, that I would put as a priority. That's not to say I wouldn't eventually support it. It depends, of course, where the money comes from. But I am not sure a pipeline with water is going to pay off when we have significant infrastructure problems inside this jigsaw of a city limit. And I think that we need to focus our priorities in terms of water, making sure water and sewer, where is the water leaking at? Okay, I want to stop so we can get our water rates down even low if we have significant leakage. So my priority is the city limits. I will say maybe yes, maybe no. I'm a skeptic about it. I'd sure like to look at it further. Thank you.
The county has no desire, it's my understanding, to get in the water business. They're willing to help us and help Freeport supply water and connect. And whenever we do that, you're going to open up all kind of growth between here and there. I mean, it's going to be wild, and we're all going to benefit from it. So yes, I'm for it, and willing to work with Freeport. And you know, whenever the county first came, we all thought that the county was wanting to get in the water business. They do not. All they want to do is help us. They want to coordinate the two so that we can better serve the area between Defuniak and Freeport.
Kevin, would you hold on just
Yes, sir.
For you folks in the back, there's plenty of room up here if you'd like to come and so you can hear part of the discussion.
Y'all can bring chairs, there's plenty of room.
Yeah, you could have this one.
You hadn't started the clock yet, have you?
He's the fastest on Ron I've ever seen now. Me and Kevin can talk 30 minutes. Ron, you got that son.
I'll go by this timer when I'm going by, so everybody.
I want Ron to talk for a while, though. I'm busy.
Y'all getting it in pretty good.
A while ago, when I couldn't find any words.
I know, I was like,
We're going to go ahead and continue with the forum.
Okay, Matt, for the sake of the people, would you read the question again?
Yes. Do you think the city should join the county and the city of Freeport in expanding water and sewer along 331?
Okay, I'm going to answer that question with an easy yes. And the reason I'm answering that question that way is because I'm in the real estate business, commercial real estate, and I do a lot of business on the south end. And the south end is running out of dirt. It's just that simple. development is coming this way. Whether we like it or not, it's coming.
Amen.
And I would say yes with a caveat. As long as we're getting a piece of that check, I'm all for it. You know, the county does have significant funds to be able to help us do it now. And if the economy is headed in a different direction. So when those tax dollars stop coming in and those pockets dry up with all the money sitting in there and we want to do it 5 years from now, the money may not be there. And we're going to need it one way or the other. So yes, I would agree to it.
Obviously, we are in favor of it. We have joined with the county, but for a very good reason. We know that by extending those utility lines, that will spur growth between Freeport and Defuniak and open up that area which is currently closed. It's one of those things, if you build it, they will come. Just like who would have thought that in a place called Mossy Head that we would have the kind of business operations going on there. That's completely remade that area. And so, yes, it will work that way for this area between Defuniak and Freeport. We also have to remember that our city is funded by utility fees. The ad valorem taxes provide about 10% of our budget. So Freeport and Defuniak need those fees, and so long as Triumph is paying for it, I think we ought to go with it.
Next question, we'll start with Janie. What do you consider the greatest needs of the city, and how would you, needs I should say, and how would you plan to fund those needs?
As we've all spoken earlier, the infrastructure. If we don't have the infrastructure, if we don't have the water lines, if we don't have the sewer lines, if we don't have the wireless for the businesses to be able to use, then they're not going to come. So the infrastructure is what we have to really work on.
While infrastructure is certainly an important issue being discussed here, I think we need more dedicated resources for economic development specific to the city of Defuniak Springs. We need to advertise our city as a destination, not only to live in, but for visitors as well. It's interesting that this city was developed on tourism, yet you won't find a single bed and breakfast in this town that is licensed. Seems quite odd. If you want to look at red tape, look at the bed and breakfast ordinance. I also think that we need to do more efforts to improve the drive-by appearance of our city. Investors and people who are thinking about living here look at a town and they ask, is it well kept? We know we have some issues with the dilapidated. Our curbside appeal certainly would increase economic development.
I think the greatest needs of this city and most small towns is a city council that is open-minded, open to growth, open to the needs of the public, without an agenda other than to serve. How to fund it? We work cheap, but just be selective and know the person, know the people that you're putting in office. Thank you.
I think one of the greatest needs of the city council is really simple. It's jobs. Jobs that provide a livable wage. Whether those jobs are tech-related or manufacturing-related, just jobs in general. No one likes to go from job to job. Nobody wants to have 3 jobs and, that equals 40 hours a week and you're still barely getting by. One of the things that kind of breaks my heart is to ride through some of these fast food restaurants and see people that I know retired from other jobs in that fast food drive-through window. And maybe they could have planned a little better. I'm not really speaking on that part. But if we have jobs that have benefits, 401ks that allow you to retire or at least work toward retirement, I think that people will want to stay here. Like I said, we want to make this our first choice, not our last choice or our retirement home.
I think our greatest needs are twofold, and they're intertwined. We talked about the need for infrastructure, and we have to have it. We can ask major companies to come here, but if we can't supply the water, the sewer, all the things that they need to set up shop, we're wasting our time. Again, those are big ticket items, so we have to seek appropriations, grants, funding anywhere we can in order to do it, because none of it ever comes cheaply. And the other thing is, once we get a business to say, hey, I'm coming here and I'm bringing 30 new employees or 50 or 100, those folks have to live somewhere. So we've got to have housing for it. Housing development, subdivisions, duplexes, single family, it's all got to be in place. There's no magic key that you turn and everything just starts coming up roses. It's something that has to be done in the long term.
Yeah, I think there are many needs. There's obviously needs for infrastructure. That's a very hot topic. There's needs for economic development, entrepreneurship programs. There's a need for a paving program. I've crossed the railroad tracks downtown and about had my teeth knocked out a couple times. There's needs for housing. But I would say all that rolls up into one single thing: strategic planning. With strategic planning, you can systematically address all the other needs.
Our next question for Mr. McKnight. What would you change about Defuniak Springs?
Wow, we don't have all night. So I would change sort of the issues related to implementing all these good plans. I'm going to stand up here. That we have. We have plenty of plans. This is the Competitive Florida Economic Development Proposal. It has about 30 pages of ideas that we need to be focused on. We've got the city comp plan that's still got a lot of ideas we need to be focused on. While I appreciate the comments about planning, planning is worthless unless you have a plan for implementation. And I would want to see a plan of implementation. Bureaucracies get stalled in the day-to-day whirlwind of daily grind. We've got to make sure, trust and verify that we're moving forward on those plans, not just generating additional plans.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Yes, sir. What would you change about Defuniak Springs?
I would look, whenever you look at sources of revenue, how do we make our money? It's not on ad valorem taxes, that's for sure. We make it off of the service. We make it off the services that we render. And I would like to see us look at each of the services we render and find a better, more economical way to do it, to get our water rates down, to get our sewer rates down. You know, in other words, we're doing great, but I would like for us to fine-tune our services and to help our citizens out. Of which I'm one. Thank you.
That was kind of a tough question. I'm sitting here, you know, I really wanted to say nothing, but that really wasn't a good answer either. I would change the process, and because I'm in real estate and connected to the planning board, I'd really work on the process for development here, because we bottleneck in several different parts of the process. The main process being they don't have enough staff. I would change it so that we had updated software to be able to process just different payments we have through the financial systems here. Those are pretty much some of the things I would change. There's a lot of things that can be changed, but just basically the things that need to bring us into the 21st century to make us competitive with other cities.
We're already changing Defuniak Springs, and the proof of it is all around us. When I first came here in 2011, the town was in a downward spiral. Stores were closing and nothing else was coming to fill that empty storefront. Companies were moving away, relocating to other places, and new companies trying to come in were having a difficult time. Some of them just gave up and went other places. We almost lost Lowe's because of the number of trees the city wanted them to plant in their parking lot. So we've come a long way since then, and the growth is obvious everywhere. We've got more shops and restaurants and businesses coming and things happening, so that change is already underway. What I wouldn't change is anything about the people who live here and make this the best small town in Florida.
You know, Defuniak is an amazing place. We have an extremely rich culture and heritage that started around the lake with the Chautauqua Assembly. Actually started with the railroad and then progressed to the Chautauqua Assembly. We are everyone's hometown when they're not at their hometown. So I don't think Defuniak needs to change, but I want to make sure that the government changes to represent the people and represents the way Defuniak is currently. We want to be guided by principle, not ritual. That's how it's always been done.
If I could change anything about Defuniak, I would change and move I-10 north of Highway 90. And then that would take care of our people that come through and visit, because when they're there on I-10, they're not going to get off and head north. But if I-10 was north of our historic district and our downtown, we would have those folks coming through our city instead of bypassing our city. But there's one thing for sure that I wouldn't change, is I wouldn't change our hometown feel that we have, because we are all one family.
Amen.
All right, that's all the questions we have at this time.
Thank you, Lord.
We are, we are going to give them each 2 minutes to sum up their platform and why they're running. And then we're going to take 5 or 6 minutes or so, give these ladies up here a chance to take a deep breath, because they've been working hard and give us time to move the table for the candidates for city marshal. So Todd, we will start with you, and Mr. Kelly, when you're through, then we will take, let's say, 5-10 minutes or so for y'all maybe to go to the restroom, get some water, and for us to relocate.
Okay, I won't draw this out very long. Just about 60 minutes. As a councilman, I want to see our city return to the basics of government. I want us all to unite behind a strategic vision and a strategic set of goals for the city. I want to apply fresh perspective and problem solving to the challenges that the city faces. Because I've grown up here, I don't want to lose our heritage and our culture. So it's important to me that we welcome new people and that we welcome new businesses, but we make sure that we do that in a respectful way. Thank you.
I'm committed to keeping our city on the right track, working toward balanced and thoughtful growth for our entire community, meeting our many serious infrastructure needs throughout the city, building on the various successful community events and activities which bring recognition to Defuniak Springs on a wide scale, and extending our natural appeal as a great place to visit and live. And I'd like to encourage everyone to vote. Every vote does count. 6 years ago, I lost by 6 votes. And 4 years ago, I won by 7 votes. That just goes to show everyone that every vote does count.
I want us to measure up to be the best small town government in Florida that we can afford.
Ladies and gentlemen, please.
We need to make sure that we trust but verify. We do not micromanage our city manager, but the city council has an obligation of policy, planning, and trusting but verifying. We need metrics and measures to see how well we are doing in our community processes. We don't want to be this fellow. He's looking the wrong direction. We don't want to be this guy. Okay? So we need good measurements. We need to avoid becoming ossified creatures that will be pumping gas in our tanks in a couple of million years. You know, we all use dinosaur juice. But we have to make sure this guy's head, poor thing, it needs to be pointing forward. And that's what I want to go for. Moving forward with advocacy, with precision, and with a good plan that we can afford to implement. Thank you.
I have 5 simple things. I have 8 years of experience serving you as your Defuniak Springs City Councilman, seat 2. I will not require any break-in time. I'll be effective on day 1. Our budget for this year is $25.2 million. How important is experience? We've got the best city council that I've ever seen, that I've ever been a part of. I'm so proud of them. I love each and every one of them. There were times that I didn't love some of them, but I learned to love her. We got a fantastic city council that's working hard for you. My last statement is keep Defuniak Springs going in the right direction. Thank you.
I want to finish up by saying thank you to Ms. Commander for hosting this forum. Thank you to all the candidates. Thank you for your courtesy and all the great ideas that have flowed through here tonight. Thank you, the citizens, for being involved in the process. You've heard a lot of things tonight about, you know, infrastructure, housing, jobs, different things of that nature. But I think the biggest thing that we have to pay attention to is Defuniak Springs is our gateway. We have opportunities sitting before us now that will set us up for the next 50 years. The young man, these 2 young men playing right here, they'll be my age, you know, before we work on the charter again, you know. And we have some city councilmen now that have done a very good job, I admit, in certain areas. But at some point, we have to look forward and not look back. We have to prepare for the future and go ahead and take the necessary steps. And taking those necessary steps, I'm asking you to vote for me on April the 9th for City Council seat. Thank you.
The current City Council is one of the most pro-growth and development councils this city has ever had. By any objective measure, our city is growing and thriving like never before. Our commercial corridors are attracting new businesses, and so is downtown. Yet, by being careful, we've managed to maintain our town's character and small town appeal. We have to continue that. The council reduced or eliminated many of the restrictive ordinances that were hurting existing businesses and strangling new growth. This has helped create record business growth, which has brought more jobs and more money for working families. I have a proven track record of actively supporting smart growth and voting to help existing businesses to expand and flourish. I will continue to encourage businesses to locate here, but I'll also vote to preserve and celebrate our historic past. All of that does make us the best small town in Florida. And finally, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to serve you.
Amen.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate it.